Yeah, I got introduced to biochar not too long ago, where we it's been brought to everyone's attention on the benefits of it. And Clay, I am fortunate enough to try his live soil as well as he makes biochar, and he approached me wanting me to give his biochar a run. So of course we jumped on it. We do a lot of R&D. We were happy to, and we're really excited with the results and what we're seeing. And I'm not the expert in biochar, but Clay, tell me a little bit about. My understanding is you can use and source different kind of wood to make biochar, and there's different grades, and the outcome will be different on what kind of woods you're choosing. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing and why you do that. What wood you select.
Well, we start with hardened softwoods. One step up that we offer in our biochar product is we also use coastal driftwoods. Um, the sea is amazing for plants, so anything that those logs that could saturate in. The biochar is burnt to a specific degree. Every creator of biochar has their own degrees. The Amazonians started it first, so obviously they didn't have thermometers. They burn it to the point where my grandpa taught me it's time to snuff it out. So we kind of did that year after year after year. I mean, before I bring it to any of you guys, I definitely had to run it in our medical grows. And so we use hardwood, softwood, and the driftwood. That kind of makes it a little bit different. There's a lot of different biochars. You can make biochar from straw. Um,
That's right.
and it's not the same on the molecular level. The straw isn't the same as the hardwoods like madronas and stuff like that. It's Mother Nature's perfect store, perfect hotel for the microbes for your soil.
And my understanding is you've moved on using some of Mammoth products, and tell me some of the goodies that you're putting into your biochar and your process. Your teas and your mix, and how why that's so much better. Why your product has become so good.
Well, a lot of R&D, thousands of plants. Biochar's whole process is to collect nitrogens and phosphorus from the soils after a fire, because there's no more foliage, there's no more roots to be able to hold that stuff in the soil. So Mother Nature doesn't want the year of rain to come along and wash all those minerals away, so she created biochar that actually collects it. So what we do is we brew 26 organic ingredients, amendments, everything from green sand, crustacean meal, alfalfa. We have a few secret ingredients that once you're using it, you get told what those are, but I can't give all the goodies away.
Yep.
Um,
You know how that goes.
and we actually brew three. It's a timing thing. You brew three different teas, and then towards the end, we actually add mammoth at the end for the microbes. Can't put them in too early, or they'll eat everything before your plants.
Nice.
So.
And I was fortunate enough to you brought me. You're making live soil now, um, and he reached out to me and wanted me to try a run of his live soil. So we have. It's very new to us. But do you want to tell us a little bit about that project and what you're doing with your live soil line and how it's special?
Well, it's special. My one of my best friends, besides Casey, is he's he's Marley worm growers. He has sends worm castings all over. Well, a lot of the organic amendments that you can buy out here have one type of worm castings. We actually have 5 different types of worm castings in ours, and the he also makes soils. So then Casey and a few other growers that use our biochar were like, well, why don't you work on a soil? So actually the last year we ran different tests, this, that, and the other. I've been building soils for 20 years, so it wasn't new to me. But to put a super soil out there for this gentleman to risk $50,000 worth of his product on, that's something big to ask, and I think it's pretty dialed in. It's start to harvest soil, no nutrients needed to be added, unless you're going to run a long outdoor. It's about 4 months is a good run. If you're going to run a long outdoor, you want to top dress with some
Yep.
more biochar.
Yeah, Clay, could you tell us a little bit about your soil making process? You're making a live soil with biochar, part of your expertise and background with the biochar. Tell us that process and how you're selecting ingredients for your live soil and how that comes to be.
As a grower, you try everything. Cocoa's amazing. Peat moss, peat moss is amazing. Our living soil actually probably has more peat moss in it per bag than any other super soil out there. I prefer peat moss. Um, it is it is organic and created to also help the microbe growth. Cocoa is a really good product also, but I just prefer the peat as a grower, and everybody's got their own choices. We use only 100% organic and naturally collected amendments. We start with micro and macronutrients. Do 3 different teas that we brew, and there's a certain order that we add stuff to it, and that's been a test, because then we test the soils and see what the runoff is, see what's not staying, what is staying, for different stages of your plant. Our first brew, we start with the fish emulsion. That fish emulsion is what speeds up that year-long process that Mother Nature needs to go through after a fire. Because I needed to speed that process up. Obviously, we harvest every week. You got to have a new soil ready to go, and that the microbes and the beneficial bacteria that grow in the fish emulsion is the first tea that we start, and we slowly add the macronutrients after that, all the way from crustacean melt, alfalfa meal, glacier silt, green sand. We also use brown and black compost from Ole Mountain, very very reputable company. Uh, Um, it's time. It's the If you think about it, you watch your compost go from colored to brown to black finally when it's ready to go, and that's all that is.
Okay.
Because we want you to be able to only water your whole cycle, so you got to have food in the beginning, and you got to have food available at the end.
What I'm hearing you say is brown and black compost. Well, one's a little more hotter than the other.
Correct. One will affect your plant a little more. The most of the black compost is now broken down and ready for your plant, ready for the microbes to eat. Um, as your microbes are feeding on that compost in our soil, your brown compost is breaking down. By the time you're switching into flour, it's breaking down that high phosphorus bat guano, which is what the cannabis plant needs, and for extra flowering, extra flower power, I like to say.
So timing is important. It
Timing
sounds
is
like.
important,
Yep.
and it takes time to learn when to do your compost and stuff. But we kind of took that out of the thought process by using both composts.
Like I said, we're really excited to run it. Thank you for that, by the way.
I
Well,
appreciate you running.
it's been just not even 2 weeks now since we transplanted them, so we're following, taking data, and we'll get you the results, and we're excited to see what we can do.
I'm glad you guys. I'm glad you trusted me, and
Absolutely.
keep. I'll be at your door every day.
Yeah.
We'll make sure we get it. Those are across all the T's. Those are definitely across all the T's. Um, the microbes we add towards the end because they'll eat everything. We're coming up, when you have living soil, you don't want to flush. It's a big, you hear people talk about flushing. Okay, there is no flushing. You want to drown your microbes? I mean, I'm just saying, you don't want to wash those microbes out because they're doing the last of their life trying to get that phosphorus out, trying to get the nitrogen out, because you don't want your cannabis to sparkle and crackle when you light it. And then, so you want those microbes to eat up everything that's left in that soil. So we're going to actually we use in our own farm sugar finishes is what I call them. They're organic extracts. I make 3 different extracts depending on the strains, and we crush the biochar into a powder. Add this with 3 different natural sugars. So as you water your last 2 weeks of the flowering cycle, that powder does what Mother Nature wanted it to, works its way through your soil and takes out all that nitrogen, grabs that all up. It's not available to your microbes or your plant anymore. So what's left? The sugar and the natural extracts that we use, the organic extracts, blueberry, huckleberry. I mean, it just depends on the strain, but then all those microbes have to feed on is that sugar, honey. There's a few other items that we use that I don't want to say, but if they are listed on the product, of course, but that just leaves nothing else in the soil but natural sugars. And
Nice.
then
So
that
we're
natural sugars, you know how sticky honey is. Well, feed your plant honey. Tell me how sticky your buds are. Just saying.
so Clay, what else outside of what you've mentioned already are you putting in your super soil, your live soil?
Well, obviously, mammoth microbes is the last. We're doing soils for other cannabis growers and hemp growers that want to use. There's all kinds of microbes out there to use, and there's different cultivators of those microbes. So we're actually adjusting per farm if they ask. So it does kind of change a little bit, but as far as the compost. There is a little bit of that brown and black compost in the teas, but very little of it. We actually add most of that to the super soil at the end. Um, Half the earthworm castings, there's 5 different earthworm castings that we use. 2 of them go in the teas, 3 of them are added to the super soil by themselves. Everything from high phosphorus bat guano, low phos, um, calcium, cal mag. We use ground up oyster shells in it, obviously. Help the pH a little bit. But Mother Nature, the biochar actually pHs for every plant. I mean, think how many plants start up after a forest fire. It ain't just a pine tree. It isn't just a weed. It has to be all the way across. So even we have some non-organic growers that are using a chemical-based nutrients that use our biochar because it does work, but they add these teas in between that to help replace the microbes. So just stay organic.
Yep.
Then you don't have to do that. I got you.
So for some of your customers that you're providing your biochar, your soil to, if they're in different areas, regions, or growing differently, say outdoors, or if it's in a greenhouse or indoors, what are some of the changes that you're having to make, or that they're wanting, maybe even for certain strains that they're running, and what are those changes that you would do for your live soil?
For the live soil, the first change that I try and do, I don't play with the ingredients so much. I play with the amount of biochar, the amount of perlite, the amount of peat moss. We'll play with that a little bit, but as far as the grow, if they're on a drip system, most of my grows are watering once a week. In a professional grow, that's a lot of labor, not being used on better things than holding a watering wand. We will change it. Basically, when it comes down to the gardeners already using it, it will change on just the amount of biochar that's added. Some soils, heavy clay soils, 20-30% biochar. I have a whole group of farmers that grow indoor fruit trees. They're running their mixes, they're using it about 30%, which is even more than most cannabis growers. So We kind of adjust it per what their soil medium, whether they're going to use a soilless or they're using our live soil. That's pretty much, I don't adjust the recipe only because I think, as being a chef for 15 years for the Hilton, I've got the mix down. I've got the Alfredo sauce pretty knocked out. And I'm not going to have my buddy over for dinner to try my Alfredo sauce if I haven't already fed it to my own family. And we use our biochar in our vegetables, my mother's house plants, I mean, everything.
Have you made a change per strain, or maybe if a customer has asked you, or do you know of, say, a strain, yeah, if it's, Blue Dream or Blueberry, that by tweaking your formula a little bit, now this is for the strain, strain specific, that you get a different result, or get that strain to reach its full potential, or and what would those changes be?
A
It's a
pretty
good
well-known
question.
strain that everybody knows. Same way with, like, say, Blue Dream. Had a Blue Dream cut for about 7 years. It's amazing. Everybody loves their Blue Dream, but we have a grower, Gorilla Glue number 4. I actually use it as one of my fathers, or not Gorilla Glue number 4, and we change it. We have changed it a bit because there's certain strains, there's landrace strains that have not been altered, that come from other countries. There's different minerals on every part of this rock. So we have had to adjust depending on we got a couple growers that grow Gorilla Glue number 4 strictly for edibles,
Hmm.
and we have backed off. We backed off about half of our biochar and ingredients in our last tea for that particular strain because anybody can grow it. You can put it in a mud puddle and it would probably grow. So yeah, we do adjust them because why am I going to have you pay for a full product when I'm not putting all that in there? I mean, I'm just not. You don't need it for certain strains. Another one, God's Gift, very easily grown, very low nutrients. Blue Dream. Now then, on the other side, we got some land races. Afghani number 1 that that can be a 13-week strain. Well, it's going to need phosphorus a little bit longer than everybody else, especially if you don't want to smoke leaf. If you actually want some density to your flower, you got to kick up that low phos in the beginning of flowering to make sure you actually get a bud instead of just.
Hmm. Thank you, Clay.
You're welcome. So, at your presentation today, what are some of the key aspects you'd like to cover again? What struck your fancy?
The main takeaways from where I spoke, and very important. It varies per state. Every state's different, but the main takeaway is you have to plan for change. There's going to be change, and you have to plan. Um, and phasing your build out or your planning is important because the future is unknown and uncertain. And so, most people that are building out to a large capacity want to phase that build, and there's unforeseens, and you want to plan for that. And if that's using mobile structures, maybe to yeah, or not knowing if you're gonna if your county or zoning will allow you to do extraction, or will put a moratorium on that area or limit your extraction, to the market itself changing, and suddenly flower might be extremely competitive, and now you want to build a kitchen, you want to launch an edible line or a topical line. So much is unforeseen. So the main takeaway is plan for change. There'll be a lot of change, and you have to kind of forecast for that, and always keep that in mind. I think another big one from my conference, my presentation, is all the different government agencies and their regulations, and how you have to abide by them all, and they're all different, and they all have their own requirements, and it makes it challenging, and those can change as well. And trying to, when you're looking for a site to or starting your business, you have to take into consideration your local authority, and the state, the city, the county, clean air, health department, department of ecology, the planning department, fire marshal.
Your
Those are,
neighbors.
yep, your neighbors. Yeah, and those are all going to vary depending on where you are. Different county will have different requirements, and even one of the things I wanted to talk more on, and we didn't, was the hoop houses, and how in my county that's considered a temporary structure. But they didn't have a definition for what a hoop house was a year ago. And in some other counties, they don't consider a hoop house a structure. And now the Clean Air Agency has come in and they're trying to regulate us being able to grow in a hoop house, this temporary structure. And they're wanting to police, if you don't have a hoop house or you're not growing, this was this month, March, last month of this year, you're not able to now grow in one. This is the Clean Air Agency, which is in Spokane County. It's they're kind of their own authority, and they're not a planning department. It's something that you think the county would be policing and telling you what you can do in a structure, and you have this other government agency coming in, and we had to file an exemption to be able to grow in these temporary structures, and we're not exempt of anything. And that's a yearly now fee I have to pay. And they want us to give them my harvest schedules, which is putting my team at risk. And there's proprietary information there. Um, and in another county, it's completely different. They might not even have a clean air agency in that county. Hoop houses aren't even considered a temporary structure or a structure at all. So all of that is going to play a huge role in where you're going to build and what your plan is, and to get yourself up to success. Basically. So doing all your homework is basically a large one.
Adaptation. You got to be open.
Another main takeaway is, and I failed at this drastically, is your budget. Whatever my budget was, I failed at that, and and now for me, it's just double it. There's going to be so many unforeseen costs that you cannot plan on or you wouldn't imagine, and so you have to. It's just really hard to get your budget down for what you're working with. So, that was a huge one for me, is just whatever you think your budget is, double that budget.
Yeah, times it by 2.
There's going to be unforeseen things and things you're going to be required to do, and new licenses and permits and government agencies coming in trying to get a piece of the pie, like the Clean Air Agency and so yeah, those are the takeaways mostly. Plan, do your homework. Your budget, whatever you think you need, you're going to need more. And also contracts. When you're dealing with your contractors, roofers, electricians, a lot of these guys, this is new to all of us, right? The cannabis industry, commercial at this scale, especially to the government agencies. So we're all on this vertical learning curve, and they're not going to know how to design a grow. They're not going to know where you need power and why and how much. Your architect's not going to know that. Your head grower, and the way he envisions his system or his method, he has to work with this architect, with the electrician. And so there's just everybody's really on a large vertical learning scale, which is exciting. Everybody's learning, and that's another reason for all the change. As they learn and figure out what's going on, there'll be changes that will be for the positive and for the negative to a business owner or to a grower, to the county, to the city. But I think those are the main takeaways.
Oh yeah, it's been as I'm indoor and outdoor. I help with a lot of different grows, and the Clean Air Act that they put together, and it's going to happen in every state. There's going to be some states that don't care, and there's going to be some that 3 or 4 different agencies pop up and they go,
Yeah.
I mean, really, a hoop house. I mean, there's cattle farms that are putting off more CO2 into the air than we could ever think of doing. And are they getting charged by the acre, or are they even getting charged for clean air? I mean, it's just kind of, it really hit a lot of farms. We're struggling,
Right.
and so I can understand them wanting to get their piece of the pie, but they could have, give your state 5 years, give your investors 5 years, because people are putting out their entire life savings into these places, and there's more and more things keep popping up. Really, you have to be, like Casey said, have 2 times the amount in your investment book than what you're planning on actually spending, because it changes it'll change next week. It's going to change again in the next week.
Next month. Yep.
Month to month, it changes. Packaging rules, labeling rules, security rules. You can set your main game plan up, but definitely leave some quotations for adaptation on it because it changes. You're right.
Yeah, one of the panels that I enjoyed, and it was today. And it was the breeding panel. A lot of what we do at Contender Gardens is the R&D and the strain selection and running these strains in different environments and seeing where we can get the best of the best and what we're looking for, right? The bag appeal, the vigorous growth, the resistance to pathogens and insects, and we're really big on that research. And I enjoyed the panel today on the breeding. It was really good to hear them talk about autoflowers, feminized autoflower seeds. We do see that becoming more and more of a big deal because in the past it wasn't. Yeah, in the world, but in the U.S. And the gentleman that spoke, Mr. Loud, did say how he wouldn't even consider or look at feminized autoflowers. Not too long ago, a couple years ago, but how he's looking at and seeing things a little differently now from going to a greenhouse, from talking to another a breeder, and that's been the truth for me as well. Where autoflowers weren't really interesting, and now we're seeing the breeding and the autoflower. What we have now to work with, the stock has changed, and when you can get 2 or 3 times your canopy in a season, when before it wasn't really an option or you wouldn't consider it. I mean, that's huge.
Huge.
That's really doubling up your yield and doubling up your sales. And we're going to do them at 2 locations this season. The autoflowers,
Yeah.
we've already sprouted them, and we have more going in. So I'm really excited to run them, and I have interest in perhaps providing some of the seed stock, these autoflowers, to some of our other fellow farmers in Washington State, because you see more and more of them running them and wanting to get that second, third crop in the year. There's a lot of potential there, and I'm glad they touched on the feminized autoflower seeds because it is up and coming.
I was at first not so happy with them either. I don't have time. I clone. I'm a breeder myself, but I had fortunate enough the last couple years to be able to run some pretty decent strains of autoflowers, and I'll tell you what, they'll be a part of my grow from now on. I'll never always go because I love the propagation process of the plant, but definitely for that third run, you got space and you need canopy space to fill out. I definitely,
Yeah.
20 some years ago, and I would say, fill it in with your autoflowers.
Yeah.
They've gotten a lot better too.
Yeah.
The first seeds I had, I wasn't so impressed, but now the breeders that are working with those are getting a lot more reputable, a lot more time under their belt, and they're a lot
I think
better.
there will be a game changer, and you'll see a huge push and evolution with feminized autoflower seeds. Farmers in my state are now using them to fill their canopy or their rows or their cells. They'll just plant them in between their full season plants or where they have their plants laid out. And then you'll just see those come in and just sprout their entire field earlier to get that extra crop. And you'll see the higher potency autoflowers, the bigger yields, and the denser bud as the breeders. And we have moved forward on this project, but the demand for them is apparent. I would say that I think we have all known just from breeders in the past and breeders today that breeders have bottlenecked a lot of strains, and so all these varieties and types have gone away because we have found things we liked and used those to breed and kind of took the best of the best to breed with, and so we have less of a selection today than we did 10, 20 years ago. And so and breeders will acknowledge this and understand that that's true. This has happened, and so there's some pros and cons to that. Obviously we get some really good hybrids and the best of the best with today's breeding and the stock that comes from it. But at the same time, we've left behind a lot of types that that we might not have anymore, or don't have access to, that are we're forgotten about or not used. And
I'm popping a couple seeds out of my seed bank this year. They're can't wait to get home and see them. I was gifted a 1970s Humboldt or a 1970s Amsterdam haze. It was smuggled out of Amsterdam. I don't know how, but I'm popping the beans. Pretty excited to try it.
Something that comes to mind for me, and these aren't really strains that are land race or ancient or stuff you can't find, but I remember a Mazar was something that I was really into that we got our hands on early on in the 2000s, um, and there was a G Blue that we really liked that I haven't seen around, and it's not an old ancient strain. This was in early 2000s as well. Trinity was another one. Um, and but yeah, that G Blue was something that we would love to get our hands on again. The G13 cross. Um,
G13 was one of my first strains.
yeah,
Back in the day, ordering seeds, peeking out the window, watching for your local mailman. Has he got a badge
yeah.
on? That was back
I
in the
think
day.
our parents maybe would be the somebody to ask on that. Someone who's substantially maybe older than me that was into the scene and now doesn't hear or has not found that strain again. Just inexistent. Yeah, because I think I'm still on the younger generation. As for when I started cultivating and up till this point, I didn't grow up consuming in the 80s. Or I was a kid, 70s. Wasn't even alive. So there's a lot of strains that I wouldn't even have any idea that don't exist anymore.